able to implement that, right? Not releasing names of MPs who are traitors is not because the RCMP are investigating. It's not a good excuse. That's one of the excuses that's being used, and the Senate is pushing back on that. Leo Housakis is pushing back on that. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we have to start with treason and traitors in the House of Commons. The reason that they're using the term foreign interference is because the news was tasked with sanitizing literally everything. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. Sanitizing everything that the Liberals have done, anything and everything. Okay. And so when they found treason, they had to come up with something that sounded like not treason. We've been dealing with this and knowing about this since 2023. So foreign interference is the term they came up with. And now they're trying to make the argument that, hold on, foreign interference isn't against the law. Yeah, it is. It's called treason. CBC Watcher is highlighting this. Jagmeet Singh says he'll toss treasonous NDP MPs from caucus and bar them from running as candidates after reading the unredacted NSICOP report, which he has not read yet. Okay, so here's the back and forth between Jagmeet Singh and the news reporters. Here we go.
You, on the floor of the House of the Commons, if you get the names in your briefing, release them, because you're not a member of the committee, so you would be allowed to do that.
So what I've said, what I'm going to do is the following. If a member of my party, anyone that's a New Democrat, a member of Parliament, I read the briefing, and if they are, it's clear to me that they knowingly work with a foreign government to undermine Canada, I will immediately remove them from caucus. There is no way I will approve them to run as a candidate, nor would I allow them to continue to sit in my caucus if they are named and they knowingly worked with a foreign government to undermine our country. I expect other party leaders to do the same thing. They have the power to look at the report, and they also have the power, we all as leaders have the power to vet candidates. It would be very obvious to me that if there was clear evidence or clear intelligence that someone knowingly worked with a foreign government to undermine our country, then every party leader should look at the report and remove those members from their party if their names come up. Would you allow?
Just before this, the next question is one where he kind of gets tripped up on. But he sounds so outraged, right? Like knowingly worked with a foreign government. Oh my gosh, right? So outraged. The problem is, we don't know how widespread the problem is. Right? We don't know how many people have had. We know at least 11, and that's a lot of MPs. A lot. It would be the difference between the Liberal NDP majority and not. Right? And so, like, if they lose 11 of the Toronto candidates, all Liberal, then they lose their majority. Interesting. What do you do with that? Emergency election for 11? If there's only 11, how do we know there's only 11, right? How come parliamentarians can read this report? How come they can know there's treason being committed, people helping foreign governments, helping their interests above Canada? That's treasonous. Can't do that against their oath, right? And they're protected somehow. But Canadian citizens who pay for this government, who don't want a lot of the rules and laws that this government is bringing in, the censorship laws that the justice minister is bringing in, for example, but there's an exhaustive list of things that the people of Canada don't want that is being brought in by these people. It's very, very interesting how he's saying we can't have these treasonous people sitting in my caucus, and yet citizens don't get to know who they are because some kind of vague national security thing whereby the voters don't get to understand how infiltrated their government is doesn't make any sense to me. None. Doesn't make any sense to me. These people are making crap up that doesn't hold any kind of water, right? Like, you've caught your toddler drawing on the wall. They've got a green crayon. There's green crayon on the wall, and they're standing there saying, I didn't do it. And you say, what about that green crayon? And they drop it and they say, I didn't do it. And you're supposed to believe them. That's where we're at with this. Like, no, give us the names. I don't believe you. Give us the names.
From other parties?
That is a very good question.
Other parties?
That's a tough one. I think for myself, I made it clear that I would do it for my party. I think it's the responsibility of the other party leaders to do it for their parties. That's why I'm really seriously challenging Pierre Poilievre. He's acting like he can't look at the report. He's talking about release the names. Look at the report yourself. And if you've got a member of your party that is named in it, then kick them out of caucus. Why would you let somebody...
So everybody goes and looks at the report. All the leaders go look at the report. Now they're bound by NSICOP and they can't say anything about the report. But they all remove 10 or 15, let's say they all remove people from their caucus. Is that not akin to releasing the names? Is that not exactly the same as releasing the names? Like exactly the same thing? Wouldn't they be bound not to react? Because that would be communicating information, right? Oh, well, yes, I did read the NSICOP report. Would the removal of those 5 candidates or those 5 people from your caucus have anything to do with reading that report? I cannot comment on that. Next question. That's an answer in and of itself. It is. Sorry about your luck. Jagmeet Singh is not an intelligent man.
Stay in your caucus knowing that they are working for a foreign government. I think that question should fall on Pierre Poilievre, and I think he should answer that. And Justin Trudeau is known for 11
Idiocy.
months, or 11 weeks, 11 weeks, and has not done
11 months.
anything. So, I mean, how is he not taking this seriously? The question about whether I would name MPs of other parties, if they're in there, is something I got to take some serious reflection on. What's the appropriate way? I will demand next steps once I read the report. What those next steps are have to be fair, have to follow due process, and I'll...
Due process. This guy supported freezing bank accounts with no charge, no conviction, no trial. Due process for the traitors, though, please. Yeah, okay, Jagmeet Singh. We're super serious about the rule of law in Canada, except for those treasonous truckers. Idiots. Senator Housakis shares this tonight at SECD discussing foreign interference. With respect to my colleague, we are asking for the names of parliamentarians because Parliament is at the heart of our democracy and because there has been no accountability and no action despite years of warnings. Years of warnings. It's not new. He's known for 12 months, says Jagmeet Singh. What do you know that we don't know? 12 weeks, I mean, Here is a senator. I don't know which one she is. I'm sorry, I don't know. But here we go.
Is I understand in the first blush reporting of this report and its contents, a bit of a shock value that has taken place. And the response has primarily been thus far from inside both chambers of Parliament, a focus on parliamentarians. Who, what, when, where. I really need us as parliamentarians to look broader in our responsibility to Canadians. These are academics that are being interfered with, research projects, corporation decisions, community organizations, ethnocultural communities, the media themselves who haven't reported on the fact that they also are subject to foreign interference. These bigger issues should be a uniting force for all of us to get outside of the inside baseball that's been going on in the last week. I say with respect, and I understand it, but there's a broader horizon here. Let's lift our eyes up and let's get focused on how this is touching every part of Canadian society, and we need to get ahead of it.
Merci, Senator Housakis.
So, and then Senator Housakis is asking some other specific questions. Here he's talking about a fictional RCMP investigation and asking, is that a good reason? Is that a good excuse for not giving us the information that we ask? And this guy, professor of criminology at University of Ottawa. So again, like these are just people. Take their opinions with a grain of salt. They're by no means the final word on anything, but nobody seems to be the final word on anything. So take everything with a grain of salt, right? Like, but anyway, this is the back and forth in the Senate. I thought it was worthwhile. Here we go.
Senator Deakin, Senator Housakis.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being with us here today. I heard you both, and I think particularly Mr. Wark, how the RCMP does not have the tools to pursue investigations when it comes to foreign interference. They didn't have the tools for years, and they certainly won't have any more of those tools under this legislation, in my humble opinion. Yet, especially even though we know that CSIS very often, and even our Five Eye allies, when they share intelligence information with the RCMP, very often the RCMP cannot even use that information in court proceedings. But yet the current government is constantly telling the House and the Senate that they cannot divulge the names of MPs and senators facing allegations of foreign interference due to the fact of not wanting to interfere with RCMP investigations. Is that response erroneous when they give that response? You want to go first?
Sure. Well, there are many reasons for which people or governments may not want to release names, but the excuse that this would interfere with RCMP responsibilities is not a good one, for the reason that the total governance of MP ethical behavior and comportment is not uniquely a police matter. So violation of criminal law certainly is. We don't currently have criminal code violations really for most of the categories of foreign interference that we're concerned with here from the NCCOP report.
That's not true. I went through, and it wasn't me who looked at the criminal code, but Naya did look at the criminal code, put up the criminal code violations, and put up what she thought would match up, right? So I think that that's disingenuous at best.
I would simply say that there has been a long history of citing RCMP or just police investigation as an excuse for not releasing public information, and usually it's not a valid excuse.
Maybe not. Take it with a grain of salt. I don't know, because it depends, right? But I don't trust the RCMP at this point in time. If they were investigating this, I wouldn't expect to hear anything until after 2030, right? So they're taking their sweet time. They know it, and they're not doing their job. They're not protecting Canadians' rights, in my opinion. They're, if anything, foot soldiers for the government and the deep state that it's taken them over. Lion Advocacy is responding to this. Canada's Parliament rocked by allegations of treason. We love to be noticed in the world, and again, we're just being noticed for terrible, awful things recently. It used to be like, Canada's such a nice place. It's like the United States, but clean and safe. And now it's like, oh, Canada's not such a great place. It's a lot like North Korea, except dirtier and with a lot more draconian laws. But this is Politico making this article, and Lion Advocacy says Canada's potentially treasonous members of parliament are now making international headlines. The Governor-General of Canada needs to take urgent action and exert all power and influence available to her. Otherwise, vestiges of her legacy will also be brought down by this. And they're trying to say that this isn't illegal. Here's Laurie Goldstein sharing this thehub.ca thing. The alleged behavior is not treasonous. Former CSIS head Richard Fadden on foreign interference. So the professor saying, there's not a lot of criminal code here. And this guy's saying, it's not treasonous. We don't have anything to cover that. Foreign interference isn't really covered in our criminal code. Bull poop. He's a liar. Laurie Goldstein says the alleged behavior is not treasonous. Former CSIS head on interference by MPs and senators. This situation illustrates a broader problem. There's no offense of foreign interference. They're trying to sanitize the word in the media. They're trying to sanitize how they talk about it. So they created foreign interference to stand in for treason. And now they're using that trick of the language to trick you into thinking that there's no criminality, but there is criminality. Here's Naya, and she goes through it. She says, the government says they're bound by secrecy. Sure, treason is the main law that's being broken, which the Liberals are ignoring, but there are more secrecy laws. So there's some secrecy laws: foreign influenced or terrorist influence, threats of violence. So threats or violence, every person commits an offense who, at the direction of, for the benefit of, or in association with a foreign entity or a terrorist group, induces or attempts to induce by threat, accusation, menace, or violence any person to do anything or to cause anything to be done that is for the purpose of increasing the capacity of a foreign entity or a terrorist group to harm Canada's interests, or that is reasonably likely to harm Canada's interests. Okay, so there's one. Harboring or concealing foreign agents is another. Sabotage is another, right? These are all I believe criminal code violations that are on the books currently that fall into this cache of foreign interference. It's illegal. It's highly illegal. They should be arrested. They're going to try and make the case that foreign interference isn't in our criminal code. Look for it. And maybe the words foreign interference aren't, but the activities that they're engaging in that are being discussed as foreign interference are in the criminal code, and these people should be thrown in jail. Instances of sedition. The government is bullshitting us to protect their own, nothing more. They have the laws in place to protect Canada and Canadians, but they choose to ignore them so they can continue with what keeps pockets lined and them in power. Yes, link is in the description if you want to check all of that stuff out. I hope. Yeah, sometimes I forget, but if you remind me, then I'll come back and do it right away. Andrew says, treason prosecutions in Canada are normally approved and overseen by the Attorney General. The Attorney General is required at law and under his professional obligations to be independent and free from conflict. It's been described as a quasi-judicial role when making decisions regarding prosecutions. The current Attorney General is Arif Varini. Mr. Varini is Attorney General who may have to prosecute traitors who may be cabinet ministers or MPs in his own government in the position of conflict of interest, or is he biased, actual, presumed, or apparent? See the post below and you decide. Andrew says, Mr. Varini, we all know why you are on the new Canadian PM's National Security Council. You were parliamentary secretary to China shill John McCallum. Has connections with McKinsey, and we're going to talk about them in a second. You were parliamentary secretary to Unified Front friend Mary Ng, and you went to university with Justin Trudeau. We can have a pretty good idea of who you are by the company you keep. Our Five Eyes allies will know too. So Mr. Varini is compromised by bias or conflict of interest, right? Or both. So that's interesting. Here is Holly Doan. Irregularities in sole source contracts to McKinsey point to widespread disregard for the rules, says Karen Hogan. Auditors also encountered federal employees too frightened to disclose what they knew. I would tell you, but I'll lose my job and maybe be killed. So, next question. I'd rather be fired than dead. Things that you didn't expect to say at your work meeting, right? Sheila Gunn Reid says, the Business Development of Canada awarded a contract to McKinsey despite it not being the highest scoring bidder. They also awarded 2 sole source contracts without documenting their justification. CBSA had 3 McKinsey contracts that were missing bid evaluation documents. ISEDC had 2 contracts that were missing bid evaluation documents. So this is a 5-minute interview, but again, the irregularities are very similar to a Arrive scam. These people knew their procurement rules weren't being followed, but they were enriching themselves so they didn't care and nobody checked. Right? So that's weird. Stacy says, liberal insiders helping liberal insiders. It doesn't get much more obvious than this. We'll listen to this one. Here we go.
The revelation.
Oh, too fast. Too fast. Just a little too fast. Back it up. Here we go.
The revelation of the sudden sharp increase of contracts that McKinsey received once this Liberal government took power. And I'll reiterate, from 2011 to 2015, McKinsey received $8.6 million in contracts. From 2015 onwards, under this Liberal government, they received $191 million, a much higher number than was previously reported. So while I agree that it is perhaps a bellwether of what is happening across departments writ large when it comes to a blatant disregard for the rules when it comes to contracting, we did see a very sharp increase in contracts to one individual company. Prior to this audit, we found there was a personal connection between McKinsey and the Liberals. In fact, it was Dominic Barton, the head of McKinsey, who was the brain behind the creation of the Canada Infrastructure Bank. You found in your audit that the Canada Infrastructure Bank gave 2 contracts to McKinsey with no evaluation criteria in the request for bids or in those evaluations. Did the Canada Infrastructure Bank have any explanation for this?
I'm going to have to ask Nick if he can provide some additional details on that.
So the scenarios they were working with was that so this gets a bit complicated. Sometimes in RFPs and so on, you have there are provisions that they don't necessarily have to follow very precisely the evaluation structure that they set up, and so that was the case with these ones in the competitive realm. Our concern was that this was not well documented. So
you have procurement rules; they weren't followed, and he says, And she says, why? Right? And the first woman says, I don't know. Nick, do you know? And Nick says, yeah, they weren't followed. It's a Gong Show, for crying out loud. It's ridiculous. I mean, like, if it wasn't such a horrific waste of money and looked so terrible on our country and did actual harm to real Canadians, it would be hilarious, right? Like, to point and laugh at these idiots, except that they're in charge of things, real things that matter to real people. That's bad. Holly Doan again says $87,000 budget cut to Senate Africa trip is difficult to bear, says Liberal appointee. Senator Boehm says, Peter Boehm says, sought $265,000 to lead a foreign affairs committee to Addis Ababa, noting other senators take more useless trips to write reports nobody reads. Listen, I wanted to go to Africa. We had this whole plan. I need $250,000 and I need it now. No. So yeah, I think I'd put a stop to all of that. What's the purpose? If the purpose is to, be a trade broker or something to that effect, fine. But I don't think I could tell you, like, who's going where, doing what on Canada's behalf at this point in time. Like, I don't even think that there's a resource that puts that together and explains to people, like, where Canada's going, what they're doing, why, how much it's costing. Like, what's the run total? Like, if you have a business, you have an idea of your monthly and yearly travel cost. You'll have an idea of your hotel cost. You'll have an idea of, like, the car rental cost. So, like, travel budget generally, catering budget, you'd have an idea of. And it seems like these people, so like and if you're in a company, usually the people would have a vested interest in making sure that, you're living okay, but maybe not everybody's getting a $6,000 suite. You know what I'm saying? Like, not everybody's living large. Now, all of these senators are very self-important. Now, they all deserve $6,000 suites each, right? Each night. And so, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, they view themselves as something that is independently important. And so they elevate this, the money that they're going to use, and they don't care about it, right? And there's no transparency and there's no oversight. And so, like, why not try and weasel an African trip for a report that nobody's ever going to read and will satisfy some kind of checkbox to allow you to take that money? You know what I'm saying? I'd get rid of it. I don't understand the point of it. Like, I don't understand the point of these diplomatic trips if there isn't a specific, like, we have a chocolate contract. I have chocolate cereal I need to make. We're going to Africa to make sure that for the next year I can make chocolate cereal, and it's going to cost roughly the same amount that it does now. So I can sell my chocolate cereal at a profit and everything's good. I would understand that. Great. Go, and I will make sure your hotels are paid for, right? Rent a car. You can even rent a 2-door coupe, right? But if people are just going for fun, that's bad. We should put a stop to it. Like, it seems like a huge waste of money, and, like, isn't a giant waste of money against Canada's interest? And they could write a report that makes it seem like they're going to Africa for Canada's interest. But the reality is, we all know it's like a vacation, right? Unless there's another reason. Let me know in the comments if there's another reason. But it seems like they're just vacationing on Canada's tax dollars or taxpayer dime. Okay, this has been too long already, but we're going to talk about taxes now. So I was hoping to get the treason and the taxes into the first half hour, but that's not happening. So, oh well. Anyway, taxes. Let's talk about taxes. Maybe I'll make it quick. Martin is responding to the Globe and Mail, and the Globe and Mail says, by raising the capital gains tax, Ottawa gores the wealthy and the middle class together. Yep. So a gore is what happens to a matador if the bull gets him, right? You don't want that. Very painful. As Canadians, we have a choice. We can build a nation of dreamers driven to build lives and communities by taking risks, or we can continue our slide towards less innovation, declining productivity, and a lower standard of living. That's where we're headed. Guilty says, did you know, this is UK, but I think these numbers are probably similar across the West. The top 10% of earners paid 60% of all income tax in 2023 and 24. 60%, is that their fair share? If they're paying their fair share, they're probably not paying 60%. That seems like they're paying more than their fair share, if you ask me, right? If I was paying 60% of something and somebody said you need to pay your fair share, I would ask where the rest of the people's contribution is, because I appear to be making more than half of it. And fair share, what exactly do you mean by fair share, right? That's up 38% from 78, 79. The top 1% paid 29% of all income tax in 23-24, up 11% from 1978-79. The bottom 20% didn't pay anything at all. The rich are already being taxed. Yeah. Here's Chrystia Freeland trying to make the case that the rich aren't contributing and they really should contribute more. That's rich coming from her. Here's Chrystia Freeland.
I have heard from some Canadians who are concerned. No one likes paying more tax, even those who can afford it the most. And to those Canadians, I want to say...
You know what no one likes? Sorry. The condescending mom tone. What she's about to launch into is not something you say to a rich person whose money you want to take. How's that? It's very, very off-putting. It's very condescending. It makes my skin crawl a little bit. It's like when she sniffs in and says, "Mr. Speaker," makes my skin crawl. Same way. Here we go.
And I want to say, we applaud your hard work and your success. You are making great contributions to our country. And we want more Canadians to enjoy success as you do and to contribute as you are. But I would also like to ask Canada's 1%. In fact, Canada's 0.13% to consider this. What kind of a Canada do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a country where kids go to school hungry? Do you want to live in a country where a teenage girl gets pregnant just because she doesn't have the money to buy birth control?
Teenage girls getting pregnant should be something that we're helping them navigate in a way that is life-affirming, rather than this nonsense. Blaming the 0.13% who pay 60% of our taxes for starving kids in schools is like Jagmeet Singh blaming Galen Weston for the increase in grocery prices. It's the carbon tax, you idiots. And anybody with sense, and if you're somebody who's part of the 0.13%, you have sense, you know this, and you're looking at her thinking, these idiots who are listening to her can't believe this nonsense. Honestly, just a little tiny bit of knowledge puts everything she says in a very, very different light. She's a liar, and she's lying in order to pit the wealthy against the poor. Very, very strange situation indeed, if you ask me. Trudeau's doing the same thing. He says right now a multimillionaire in Canada could pay a lower marginal tax rate than a nurse. We're changing that. We're asking the wealthiest few to pay a little more to pay their fair share. Brian Lilly says the truth is with these changes, it will be middle-class small business owning Canadians who have saved for their retirements with after-tax dollars who will be hit hardest. Translation, Trudeau is trying to make you believe something that isn't true. So is Freeland, right? Absolutely. So is Freeland. Here's this guy. This is a flashier show than mine, I guess. But he's talking about the taxes and specifically the capital gains tax. It's a little loud, I think. Hold on, turn it down. And here we go.
Tax. And if there's only 40,000 people...
too fast. Sorry, everyone. Sorry. He's talking about taxes. Maybe you didn't hear. Here we go.
And if there's only 40,000 people that are affected, they could actually get the names of these people and actually go after the top 1% and do a tax reform for the people that are earning the top 1%. But guess what? These people are their buddies. They're best friends. They're actually not going after those people. This new capital gains tax is going to specifically go after our doctors, entrepreneurs, small businesses, and yes, our retirees. You're going to want to take a look at this data. There are 96,000 doctors in Canada, so they say they're only affecting 40,000 people. I don't know, but guess what? Their math ain't mathin'. This is just looking at doctors. I know what you're going to say. Not all of them have corporations. Well, a lot of them have to build their retirement fund, and it will be affected by this tax. I got a couple clips from Chris.
So we'll leave it there. But just doctors, 96,000 doctors are being impacted by this tax. It's a negative thing. It's going to harm them. And they were instructed by the government to structure their businesses this way because it was tax friendly to do it that way. And now the government is changing things in a way that harms them. And they're saying maybe the provinces should give doctors a raise. Crazy town. Gov.exe says Chrystia Freeland, a WEF agent and traitor, says she wants to make life more affordable by Canadians by hiking taxes. She also wrote a book called Plutocrats, The Rise of the New Global Super Rich and the Fall of Everyone Else. Time for these people to be arrested. Yeah, we're not going to listen to Chrystia Freeland right now. Mike Talks Money says Paul Martin on reducing the capital gains tax in the year 2000. The antithesis of Chrystia Freeland, here's the quote: if companies are going to invest, we want them to invest in Canada. If they're going to create jobs, we want them to be created in Canada. If young people are going to have opportunities, we want those opportunities to be right here in Canada. The current government says go anywhere else because Canada will take all of your, if you're successful, and the more successful you are, the more Canada is going to redistribute your wealth. That's what Chrystia Freeland was saying at the beginning of this whole series of tabs, right? She has no interest in being fair. She wants the 1% to pay for all of her social programs. It's crazy. It is absolutely bonkers. Here is Jason. He says he's responding to Kim GC Moody, and the quote, they say, read this quote, read it again, and absorb it. This quote from a press conference given by Chrystia Freeland is this past weekend, is politics at its worst. Using stuff like this to defend a capital gains inclusion tax rate is frankly vile. So this is do you want to live in a country where the very top live in luxury, but most do so in gated communities behind ever higher fences using private healthcare and airplanes. I use my plane to fly to my doctor's appointment. Yeah, thank you. That's why I need it. Jason says, I love how the tax affects only a few people and gets them to pay just a little bit more, but somehow also simultaneously will solve a ton of social programs. Yeah. Schrodinger's tax, both a lot and a little at the same time. It's holding both positions at the same time, right? Very interesting stuff. Can't do that. I mean, I guess you can do that in physics, but it's very advanced physics. Ryan is sharing this Jagmeet Singh clip. Jagmeet Singh says, yeah, we definitely support the capital gains tax 100%. Why didn't they do this a decade ago? There we go.
The capital gains inclusion, increasing that, something New Democrats have long called for. We've always believed that it's unfair that a worker has to get taxed on their entire salary, but someone who makes their income off of capital gains gets a big advantage. And we've always said that should be closed. We've campaigned on that numerous times. The Liberals are acting as if they haven't been in power for 9 years. They could have brought this in 9 years ago if they were serious about it. And now they're acting like they care about the fact that there's this unfairness going on. So I want to point that out, that this could have been done a long time ago. Of course, we support it, and we'll continue to push for other measures as well.
So don't expect Jagmeet Singh to vote this down or anything like that, because he has no intention of it. Ryan O'Connor says, NDP leader, plumbers and electricians with investment properties should be punished for trying to save for their retirements. Yep, that's about it. Keith Wilson is responding to Stephen Galbeau. Galbeau says, making life more affordable for every generation starts with fair taxation. Our government is asking everyone to contribute their fair share. Liars. Keith says, if you care about fair taxation, you would immediately end the carbon tax. If you cared about every generation, you would resign so the new government can start undoing the harms your failed extremist policies have caused. Yeah. Alberta Plumber. Oh, this is the water main break. I can't believe we're an hour in and we're talking about the water main break now. I was going to put this really early in the show because I like to get this kind of information out. But anyway, regardless, Alberta Plumber says, rest in peace, welders, plumbers, sheet metal, and roofers. Hot work shut down until the fire ban is lifted. So hot works, all hot works requiring a fire safety plan are prohibited. Hot works involve open flames or producing heat or sparks, including but not limited to cutting, welding, soldering, brazing, grinding, adhesive bonding, roofing operations, thermal spraying, and thawing pipes. All routine sprinkler maintenance is canceled until further notice. If the work is an emergency that affects life or health, please email this person for further direction. So yikes. No good. Rob says, even just extra extinguishers and someone to keep watch for 4 hours after the work is finished. This ridiculous city has no idea how their actions affect others. So this is the Calgary Construction Association. It says the decision to ban all hot works in Calgary has left at least 800 roofers without work during a prime construction period. We urge the CFD to reconsider and implement a balanced safety-first solution that doesn't halt the construction industry. The hot works ban includes, but is not limited to, cutting, welding, soldering, brazing, grinding, adhesive, bonding, roofing operations, thermal spraying, and thawing pipes. These are all trades that operate with fire safety protocols and measures on site. The ban is a massive blow to the construction industry during a critical time, disrupting momentum, project completion, and more. Let's find a balanced approach. It's a lockdown for the construction industry, right? It's dangerous because the water is not around. So lockdowns, lockdowns, lockdowns. That's the only solution we have. That's it. Can't do anything to mitigate danger. No. The only thing, stop work, lockdowns. Destroy the economy. Alberta Leonidas says, reminder that City of Calgary does not want water restrictions lifted ever. They want this control apparatus in place indefinitely. The repairs will drag on and on. We will be required to sacrifice until they can lie us into a drought, which will extend the restrictions again. So, yeah, I really feel like it's the same kind of tap dance that we got with COVID, right? Pierre Poilievre is speaking about the church fire, saddened by the destruction of St. Anne's Anglican Church in Toronto due to a fire. My thoughts are with the entire community grieving and loss of their place of worship and the many artifacts, frescoes, and murals inside the church, including some created by a group of 7 artists. So not great. And it's interesting because Poilievre is breaking with Trudeau. Trudeau hasn't mentioned one church fire. Poilievre is mentioning them. Interesting. Here's a backbencher, or maybe not a backbencher. Is he going to be a shadow minister? Maybe. Not yet. Jamil Giovanni says, over 100 churches in Canada have been burned, desecrated, or vandalized in 2020 since 2021. Faith communities must work together to defend religious freedom. Sign and share my petition. So that's just a collecting, making a list to tell people all about whatever, right? Like it's basically an election strategy. I don't like the join my petition thing. It seems like you're going to get something done, but really all you're doing is giving your information to the Conservative Party. Globe and Mail says, Toronto church fire that destroyed group of 7 murals. Not suspicious at this time, says the police. They'll wait until somebody else finds the suspicious thing, and then they'll launch their investigation. I'm sure it's not suspicious whatsoever. No. The only thing that makes it suspicious is the 100 other churches that have burned across Canada. Not suspicious. It's fine. It's totally fine. Everything's just fine. Totally fine. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful